Hello and welcome to this week's Thursday's edition, I believe, of the Terry Scottish Football Podcast. Rob and I are recording this on a Wednesday, which is why we're a little bit I stumbled over my words as if I don't do that often enough. But we are with you with what is very much a contractual obligation podcast here. It is an interesting topic, and I think it's like one of those things. It's like the classic down the pub talking point, but I think it gives us a really good opportunity to almost provide a bit of a summary of where seasons have gone so far. So it's basically a discussion of who the best player in each Scottish Premiership team is. And rather than introducing the other person on the podcast, I've introduced the podcast first, which is remiss of me. But I am joined by Mr. Robert Borthwick.
Hello there. Yes, I'm here. I'm ready to talk about absolutely fine Scottish Premiership players. And should we give a spoiler to what the patron is as well? There,
I wonder if people can guess. We are talking in the main show about the best players in every club. So have a think about what that Patreon might be. It would be quite mean-spirited in the main show that goes out to millions. In theory, is available to the entire population of the world for free to diss people, but we will happily do that behind a paywall. So the Patreon, £2 a month is all you need to pay to get access to these wonderful shows. It is a bargain. We will be talking about the worst in each squad and much more briefly than we are about the good ones here, where we're going to go into depth on some of our favourite players or the best players from each club. Anything interesting been happening to you in the meantime, Rob?
Anything interesting? I was just saying to you right before we came on air, I've quit smoking, and in the interim, I've got a lost Mary. People can now see this because this is going on YouTube. So if I do take a little toot on the way through, it's because I'm either stressed or I just need a little bit of nicotine to help me going. But that's 5.5 weeks, nearly 6 weeks without a cigarette now.
That's good.
So
it's good, and you're young enough. You're young enough that you should. Your I was going to say your liver, not your liver. Your lungs should recover to full capacity.
No, I've pulverised them into the ground since the age of 18. I think there's no coming back. But listen, we can only go slightly forward. First year from now on until my dying day, which who knows could be in a couple of years. But yes, I'm making small improvements.
Fingers crossed it's not. I've got myself a new ring light, which you can see. So I'm now like petrified of like I'm in like 1080p here on this broadcast now. So it's a real worry that people can actually see all the books that are behind me now, rather than just being fuzzy and can judge me on them. And they can also I was tidying up my hair there because I'm like it looks terrible. I've not really been out of the house today very much, so had no reason to fix it up. And normally you just come and sit on one of these podcasts and you don't care, and now it's like you're being broadcast to the world again, so you need to look after it. But
I mean that copy of Mein Kampf did absolutely take my eye there, but otherwise a solid bookshelf.
There for research purposes, Rob. But we will. It's absolutely not a solid bookshelf. I was about to bring out our books in to take a peek behind the curtain. You need to prop up my laptop a little bit because my stand for my light's too high. So I've had to lift my laptop up so that when I'm looking at the screen to look at you, that I'm sort of also looking at my camera. And I was about to take a kind of big weighty book out, and then I remembered that I couldn't do that because it's actually like holding up one of the shelves because the screws are an IKEA bookcase that's been moved too many times is what we have here. So it's not as sturdy as it might look. So if at any point it falls down behind me, it will not be a massive surprise. And talking of things falling down, we can start with Aberdeen Football Club, who's you could have really thrown any club's name in there, couldn't you? And it would have worked. Such has been this season. But we are not going to try and be fancy about this. We're going to go in alphabetical order here. And I will ask you first, Rob, who do you think at the moment, and I guess to start with, talk me through your criteria for selecting players for this, because it might be different as well. Who have you picked as Aberdeen's best?
I mean, my criteria throughout this list is a mixture of who's playing best just now and who I think is just the best player at that club. So it's a bit of a mishmash, to be honest with you, in terms of who I'm going for. For Aberdeen, it's a pretty obvious one. It's a pretty easy start. I did this in alphabetical order. It's Bojan Majowski. He's always been a very good striker. He was great last season. He maybe tailed off a wee bit in the middle, which isn't unsurprising considering who was the manager and what was going on at the club. But he's shown that with the right resources around him, he's always going to be a goal threat right foot, left foot header. When he dives and wins penalties, he can stick them away as well. So, listen, I think Bojan Majowski is a phenomenal player. I think he's a really, really talented striker. He's got a bit of everything. And you saw even with his goal against Rangers on Sunday, he's got that turn of pace as well. When he's going in behind, you know, he has got 5-10 yards. He's got a decent element of pace. He's got the strength, but then he's also got the instinct of a first touch finisher. You know, he didn't need to go one-on-one with Butland there. He just knew and trusted himself on his left foot that he could put into the bottom corner. I think he's a great player. I think Aberdeen will make a very decent sum of money off him as well. And I think that when I was looking through it, you could argue guys like Leighton Clarkson's got all the talent in the world. Has he done it so much this season? Maybe not. Duke had a phenomenal season last season. He's tailed off a wee bit this time. Can't really give it to him. You see the improvements in defence that they've had from this season to last. Guys like Gartenman and Jensen. Kelly Roos is an outstanding goalkeeper, but I think for me, Majowski was absolutely the standout as 11 goals already this season, and a guy that is just going to continue to put in the back of the net until someone, as I say, pays a couple or a few £1 million for him.
I think I had the same player and I had pretty much the same kind of idea behind it as well, which is there's a mix here of who are the very best players, but there's also got to be an element of recent form in it. And I think had you asked this question 6 months ago about Aberdeen, Majowski wouldn't have been the one you'd have gone for. He had a pretty good first season, but I think a lot of us kind of were in agreement that he seemed quite a limited player, good goal scorer. But I think it's interesting because I think Ewan Taylor was talking about Rangers transfer policy and the fact that these seem to be like trying to sign strikers who haven't done that well in better leagues. And it maybe hasn't been working all the time for them. Whereas it's with Majowski, certainly Aberdeen signing was like a player who has done well in a worse league, and it's kind of seemingly worked out for them. So Aberdeen have got themselves now a real asset as a centre forward, someone who will score a lot of goals, as you've seen, but also has added a lot more of the all round game this season, and that's basically a big part of why they are clinging on to like the top six and beyond that, like because I think without his goals they would be having a real struggle this season. So yeah, he was the player I picked, and I think everything you said is true. And he's obviously added. He's an international player. He's kind of annoyed England even recently. Like he's been playing to a high standard for them as well as for Aberdeen, and he's done it in Europe. Duke, who was kind of the player you thought was the big name coming into the season, he's not even been getting his game in Europe. And Clarkson, as the other one you mentioned, been a bit of a disappointment. I think he'll turn it around. I think he's too good a player not to. But yeah, I think Majowski was a pretty obvious choice and a good one to get started on, because there was kind of, I didn't expect much disagreement on Aberdeen. I think there's 3 or 4 clubs where that'll be the case, and there's a few clubs where it's like, oh, I wonder who Rob's picked here, because it's not clear and obvious. And actually maybe the second club that we'll go for might fall into that category, which is Celtic.
Yeah, for Celtic, there's obviously always a plethora of options. They are the best team in the league. They're going to win the league by, I reckon, between 8 and 12 points. You know, I think that's roughly the gap it is right now as well. I don't see that changing. They've got strength from back to front. I could easily say Cameron Carter-Vickers. I could easily say Callum McGregor. I could easily say Kyogo Furuhashi. I'm going to go for Matt O'Reilly. And again, this is based on current form as well as potential, as well as what he might end up making Celtic in the summer, because he has just taken his game to a new level this season. You know, not any longer the top goal scorer in the top flight because of David Turnbull and James Tavernier's penalties, but certainly a guy that has just improved his game in every way, which is interesting because since Ange left the club and Rodgers came in, you've seen a regression, I think, from quite a few Celtic players. Matt O'Reilly has been the exception to that rule. He, I think, underratedly does the dogged work. You know, he's actually really adept at winning the ball back, but it's all about what he does with the ball at his feet. Got a great range of passing, short and long. He's got an incredible ability to make the right run at the right time. And that's not just, I'm saying, into the box to put into the back of the net. I mean, that could be spinning wide to take it on the right-hand side. That could be coming deep to take it off of Carter-Vickers and find that space. I think he's just he's a really intelligent footballer. He's obviously been merited now with his first Denmark cap. He's got a bit of everything for a midfielder, and I think that you look at the age he is right now, he's still young. He is another really smart piece of recruitment from Celtic, something they've done brilliantly over the last, 10 to 15 years, regardless of the last couple of years, you look at the likes of Van Dijk and Wanyama in the past that's making them so much money, Jota being another, Matt O'Reilly's the next in that line, and I think he's going to get himself a great move. And I think that one more string to his bow is that he suits the English Premier League. He's already played, obviously coming through at Fulham. He knows the English game really well, but his style of play would suit the Serie A brilliantly. It would suit the Bundesliga, La Liga. He's got that touch and pass that he can do it from there. He's got a really bright future ahead of him, and I think that this season he's just stood a little bit above the rest. I adore Kyogo. I think he's Mac and a striker, finding space and one-touch finishes and getting himself in the 6-yard box. Carter Vickers is a unit. He's always going to be an 8 or 9 out of 10, especially domestically. But yeah, Matt O'Reilly for me this season is the guy.
And he was one that I put into mind, but I went the opposite with Celtic, and I thought, like, unlike some of the other clubs where players don't hang around long enough for you to really appreciate them over the long period, I've went for their captain. I went for Callum McGregor, who I think I think I talked about this with Amy on a recent podcast, and was talking about his Scotland form. He's a very underrated player for being a very good player, because I think Callum McGregor could easily be playing at a higher level in terms of club football, in terms of where he is, but he's happy at Celtic and he's been paid well enough, and there's no real reason for him to leave Celtic. And I don't get all this stuff of people saying, it's a lack of ambition. There is more to life than choosing to play football at the highest level. I think that for him, if he's a Celtic fan, he's grown up a Celtic fan, he's able to earn a ludicrous amount of money to captain his boyhood club, and to if that was like, folk talk about like Francesco Totti or something, he could have gone to bigger clubs in Roma, and people kind of, treat that as a romantic story. But when it's a Scottish player kind of from in and around Glasgow who chooses to play for Celtic, it's kind of not looked upon
a lack of ambition.
Yeah, it's a lack of ambition, but he's got the opportunity to play on the Champions League stage, okay, not with a good team, and he's got the opportunity to play on the international stage, which is still letting him prove himself. And I think he's shown many times for Scotland recently he can kind of mix it with the best players. I think 2 performances against Spain as an example, just a very key player in that Scotland team. So I think, while O'Reilly's been the better player this season, undoubtedly, I've just stuck with McGregor on the basis of him, just the bigger picture, the body of work that he's built up over well over a decade at this point.
I think it's interesting, just to add one more thing on McGregor, is the reason he's still at Celtic is because of the current manager. There's been managers in between, but the current manager made him into the player he was. And I think that, the work that Brendan Rodgers did with guys like, James Forrest, this will be his last season at Celtic. I think it's fair to say that he's reached his premium, he's reached his top at Celtic now. Guys like Kieran Tierney that Rodgers brought through, there's more examples, but Callum McGregor was the big one in terms of, he was all set to leave, really. It was kind of like, where's he going to go next? And then Rodgers came in and turned him into this phenomenal player, playing him alongside Scott Brown in the midfield and making him into this, technically very good player, but making him dogged and making him a ball winner and a guy that's going to be that, that number 6, that pivot. I hate that word, but he can take the ball from his fellow midfielders, or he can take it from the back line. As fullbacks, he's always just shifting across the park, really hard to catch. And I think that it's every possibility he ends his career with Celtic now, because he is happy, he is the club captain, and he's got a huge possibility to try and usurp the likes of Scott Brown in terms of tournaments won and trophies and all
even
that.
As well. I think he's got a ludicrous number under his belt. I was looking at it recently, and I don't think he can reach kind of the top with them unless he's kind of still playing regularly for like another 6 or 7 years, which he won't be, just because you can't be at that age at the level that you can't be playing like 60 games a season as he does now at 36. You wouldn't have thought, although he's not really showing any signs of slowing down, but he's definitely got a chance to kind of make himself into the list of kind of all-time kind of appearances for Celtic, and that's even though he was a bit older when he kind of broke his way into the team. As you said, he had his loan spell at Notts County, and then he was maybe 21, 22 before he was a regular for Celtic, or maybe even a wee bit older than that. And so I think, you're right, he's got a lot. He'll have a big legacy at Celtic, which he has a real opportunity to, extend almost. I think he's a very good player, and we're seeing that. It's good when you have someone who you can kind of support for your national team sometimes. So as much as you kind of want him to lose every other game he plays, at least there's some aspect that you can enjoy that player. Okay, another club where I think there might be a potential for disagreement is Dundee. We'll just continue with the pattern of you going first, and who did you pick?
I'll start this by saying Dundee have had a really, really good start to the season, and there's so much to like about that team as well. Trevor Carson in goals, Joe Shaughnessy coming in has done a phenomenal job. I really like Lyle Cameron. I think he's got a huge future. He's maybe in the last few weeks maybe dropped off slightly in terms of his performance level. Luke McCowan has got the capability of scoring, great goals and scoring tap-ins. I really, really like Bakayoko up front. He is like my perfect heart striker. Like he is someone that I wish that we'd picked up. I'm going to go for Owen Beck. I'm going to go for a guy that is not actually owned by Dundee. He's on loan from Liverpool. But of all the summer signings, he's the guy that stood up and really been noticed for me the most, playing left back, left wing back. But it's his ability going forward as much as defensively. I think he is a really strong defender, one-on-one. You're not really going to beat him for pace. He's dogged. He's going to put the tackle in. If he needs to slide, if he needs to stand up, he knows what he's doing. He's really disciplined. But I think just in terms of what Tony Docherty has been able to bring to this Dundee team, everyone has always seen them as a clown car club, and I think that's fair. He's completely changed that, and signings like Owen Beck have allowed him to do it. Obviously, Beck got his first goal against Hibs at the weekend. Didn't matter in the end. It's a rare home loss for Dundee. Not something they're used to at Dens in the last, 12 months or so, to be honest. But Owen Beck just strikes me as a guy that's got a huge future in the game. It probably won't be with Dundee, but you're looking at, there's going to be clubs like Hearts and Aberdeen, maybe Rangers. You never know how well he does between now and the end of the season. That'll be looking at him and saying, right, this guy can perform to a really high level in the Scottish Premiership. I want to take a wee punt on him. And yeah, he's just impressed me massively. Really good technically with the ball at his feet. Really good physically. Yeah, just a cracking player. But as I say, loads of contenders for Dundee this season so far.
I think there was down to two players for me, and he was one of them. And I ended up going for the other one on the basis that Dundee have been, as you said, a bit of a clown car operation for most of the last few times in the Premiership. And the difference this season is they are keeping a lot of clean sheets. And you could look at centre halves for that, but I think the goalkeeper that they've brought in Trevor Carson is just made such a big difference to that in terms of that. And they paid good money for him. Do you know what I mean? They went out and they spent, which, Dundee had a history of spending when they couldn't afford it. I think there was a speculation this time that was more reasonable to make, and I think a number of clubs would have probably had their finger hovering over that button in the summer. I certainly think my own would have been thinking about it as well, but he has been pivotal in keeping a lot of clean sheets. He's had several very good performances. He's not a flashy goalkeeper. He doesn't do anything amazing, but he's consistently, for the three clubs he's played for, not including Dundee United, who didn't pick him, basically, but the three clubs he's played for regularly in the top flight, has kind of constantly pulled it out of the bag and has been part of several really good teams as a result. And so I went for him on the basis that the last time Dundee had a good top flight season, their goalkeeper was Scott Bain, who, as much as he's not, maybe he's a bit of a joke figure now, that was the last time I think they had a really good goalkeeper for this level. And I think it is really important. I think we were talking about it recently. Teams don't often get relegated with a good goalkeeper. And that's part of the reason why Dundee will not be going anywhere for a change this year, I think. So unless he, has another falling out because he can't play against Rangers or something like that, like happened at St Mirren, you never know. But yeah, I went for him. But I think everything he said about Beck is true, and he's been a really exciting player to watch. And another on the Liverpool left back factory that are popping up every 6 months in Scotland at this point. So who knows who'll be next in January. We'll wait and see. Probably not Andy Robertson though. Yep, so that takes us on to our fourth club. It's your club, Rob. I suspect we probably both have the same answer here, but you never know, because maybe my sort of basic knowledge of Heart of Midlothian will be superseded by your expert knowledge. But who have you got for Hearts?
I'll tell you what, let's do a 3, 2, 1 and say the name, because it's going to be the same thing. So 3, 2, 1, Lauren Shankland.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, there's no doubt that Lauren Shankland is the best player at Hearts.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't need explaining from me. He scores all the goals. He links all the play. He wears the captain's armband, and he is the best player at Heart of Midlothian Football Club. He's also the player that Heart spent the most on, so it's maybe not a surprise that he is the best player at Heart of Midlothian. But I think that, during this season, he's had a shite couple of months. He had a really poor couple of months where he wasn't really getting on the score sheet, wasn't really doing much. He's still got 11 goals for this season. He is one of the top scorers in the Premiership. He's scored in Europe. He's scored in the Cups. He's ridiculous. Honestly, he's surprised me so much. And I think that, Joel will have said this on podcast. I've already said it on podcast. It doesn't need repeating. But the way that he plays football, not just in the penalty box, has surprised me massively. His touch, his ability with the ball at his feet is superb. His passing, left foot, right foot, is brilliant. And sometimes it's a first-time left foot round the corner, 40-yard pass into Alex Cochrane, and he does it just without thinking. He, honestly, wildly talented footballer. His lack of pace is the thing that's the reason why he's at Hearts. He would be at a better level. That's probably why it didn't work at Beerschot over in Belgium, because he's not got that 5-10 yards that I was talking about with Majovski, for example. He's not got that. He's got everything else in his game. You see the goal that he scored for Scotland against Georgia, and I mean, that's another thing. He's now on the score sheet for Scotland this season. I've seen him score that goal 5 or 6 times, peeling off the man at the back post, using his physicality, heading it back across the goalkeeper. That is a guy that just knows how to put the ball in the back of the net. He does it expertly well, and he does it so well that I think he's maybe potentially underappreciated by fans of other teams in terms of his all-round play, because he's just, he's Hearts' best player. He's probably going to be here for a good time, not a long time at this stage. I think he probably will get another decent move, whether that's along the M8 or down south, Southampton. We're looking at him in the summer, for example. So, he's a phenomenal player. One of Hearts' best number 9s in my lifetime. Yeah, great player.
I think there's a little bit, and it's a bit of a obviously I'm not saying he's as good, but there's like a bit of a comparison with like Harry Kane, in that he's a goal scorer first and foremost, and that's what he's always been known as. And then as he's got a wee bit older, he started to, I think, develop a lot of the creative side of his game. Because I mean, you look at his goal scoring record beyond like when he knuckled down when he joined Ayr United, because his career looked like it was completely on the slide after, he's at Aberdeen it didn't work, at Morton it didn't really work, at St Mirren it didn't really work, and you thought, where is this guy going? And Ayr took the gamble, and the goals they scored and the amount of goals, and it wasn't just like he was scoring for them in League One. They got promoted to the Championship. He had that game where he scored 4 against Dundee United. They obviously went out and bought him. He continued that goal scoring record for them in the Championship. Some people were sceptical if he can make the step up, and then he did have a good, decent goal scoring season for United, but it was in amongst the fact that he wasn't really being used as a forward in the traditional sense. He was very much part of a team that was set up to be effective, and he did a role in that team. But since he's come back, he was 20 goals for Hearts last season, wasn't he? And that's not that common for Hearts forwards in recent times, and he'll probably get the same again.
I mean, it wasn't just that. It was 28.
All right, okay,
it's like he equalled John Robertson's 20-goal record in February in the cup tie against Hibs, and then continued to score. Quite easily. If you look at some of the chances he missed, he could have scored 30 plus. And he's on track to score 30 plus this season. He scores a shit ton of goals, and you're right, his career trajectory is a lot down to him just saying, like, right, I do have this talent, I just need to plug away. And he found the exact right team in Ayr United to be able to do that. Yeah, he's a joy to watch. He can flit in and out of games, and I mean, I'll leave it on this. If I had made the comparison with Harry Kane, people would have been shouting at their podcast listening device right now. But you've said it, so it's fine. You're not even a Hearts fan. But honestly, it's been on the tip of my tongue for weeks. It is very similar to Harry Kane, what he's able to do. So listen, I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Well, that's good, and hopefully he's injured on Saturday. We'll move on to Hibernian Football Club. And again, this was a tricky one, I think, in the sense that they've got a few players who have been quite good, but I don't think they've got a standout as like, oh man, that guy is clearly their best player in the way other clubs do. But there was one that I landed on. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I found Hibs and maybe Rangers actually the toughest in this, because Hibs have got a lot of good players who occasionally stand out, but maybe not an absolute out and out best. So the guys that stand out but maybe aren't the out and out are Martin Boyle, Ellie Yuan. Yuan can't get a game just now with Montgomery, because I think it's kind of the realisation is like, where do I actually play this guy to get the best out of him? I'm not 100% sure. My player that I've gone for is Joe Newell. I have said this begrudgingly in the group chat for ages, months and months and months and months. I really like Joe Newell. I like the way he plays football. I like the way he goes about his business. He is an absolute fucking pest to play against. I can't imagine how annoying it would be to have a guy constantly on your heels, and if you take a loose touch, he's going to go through you. And that's what I love in a central midfielder. But he's also got the football to back it up. He's got the leadership to back it up. He's been given the armband a number of times now, both under Johnson, I think, and now under Montgomery as well. He's not going to get you 10 goals, 10 assists a season, but he's going to give you enough from the midfield that essentially, if you play a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-4, I suppose, in Hibs' case, he is the absolutely perfect number 8 in there who can go and help your defence and then go forward and help your attackers. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm a huge Joe Newell fan. Fantastic footballer, and one that Hibs should really be mindful to keep a hold of, especially through this transitional period when I'm sure Nick Montgomery will be looking to bring in his own players and really stamp his authority on the team. Joe Newell is a guy that should be given a long-term contract and say, right, he's the next David Gray, Darren McGregor, Paul Hanlon, Luton Stevenson, a guy that gets the club, understands what he needs to do, but also is going to turn up for you and play well week in, week out. And that's what he's doing right now.
He was one I definitely thought about, and I think I agree again. It's a boring podcast as we agree with each other a lot here, Rob, but Newell's a big player for Hibs. I thought about him, and then I thought, like, the player for Hibs that consistently over years and years does something in a game is Martin Boyle. When you need him, no matter if he hasn't played football in 5 months, if he's just arrived off a flight from Saudi Arabia 3 days previously and a belly full of milkshake, he turns up and he basically produces a moment, produces a goal. Is he involved in games all the time when he plays? Not really. Like there are games where you don't see him for 70 minutes, and then all of a sudden he skins the fullback and delivers a cross or pops up on the edge of the box and slams one in or whatever he does. And I think he's a strange player in that he's quite limited, but he has the particular limited skills that are really not that easy to stop because he's quick and he's sharp and he's quite a good. He's got quite a good right foot when it's either finishing or crossing the ball, or at least he's effective with it. And therefore, it's not like when someone's just got he's all right foot, you can just show him down the line. If you show him down the line, he'll still do something, and he can cut in and he can do stuff. So it's like, even though I think his all-round game is quite lacking sometimes, like I don't think defensively, even though he's played wing-back and stuff, I don't think he really puts his heart into it defensively, and I don't mean that in a bad way, I just mean he's not a defender. And I think, tackling has never been his biggest strength. I don't think he's creatively actually all that good. Like, I don't think he doesn't do anything imaginative, but he does things effectively, and that's, I think, the kind of player I like quite a lot is he produces constantly. You always get output from Martin Boyle, and even when he's not playing well, he'll do something. So I'd kind of gone for him on that basis.
And maybe some recency bias because he absolutely tore you to shreds just the other week there.
Yes,
so yeah,
of course. Who hasn't in this league at this point?
Might have something to do with it. Listen, I am going to ask you the next one, Craig. I think you should go first. We are, of course, talking about Kilmarnock, Ayrshire's Kilmarnock Football Club. Who for you is their best player right now?
I think there are a few candidates. I think this season we've had some standout performances from David Watson, who I think has signed a new contract today till 2026. He will not be playing for Kilmarnock in 2026. He's 18, I think still just about to be 19. 11 years at the club already. As I say, I think he'll be lucky if he gets to 12 or 13 because someone's going to come in, all energy midfielder, all of that. But I've not gone for him. I've not gone for many of the impressive centre-backs that I think we've got at the moment. I've gone for the same answer I would have given you last season, which is Danny Armstrong. Weirdly, two of Kelly's most important players this season have been players who had been discarded almost, had been basically not really involved in the championship winning season. Armstrong came into it last season and suddenly it was a bit of a revelation, and this season it's been Brad Lyons. It's been the same, where suddenly you're like, oh, actually this guy should have probably been playing in the championship a bit more, or has kind of something's clicked in his head or whatever it's been. I think Armstrong's had something in the region of like definitely well into double figures. I think it's nearly 20 goals and nearly 20 assists since we got promoted in all competitions. That's a lot for a player playing for Kilmarnock, and not that I think he should be close to it, but if someone was doing those numbers at Hibs or Aberdeen or something, there would be talk of a Scotland call-up. I don't think he's anywhere near it. I don't think he should be, but I think to be doing that for a Kelly team is quite impressive. Is he quite predictable? Very much so. All he does is try to take people on and cross it with his left foot, takes lots of corners, flings lots of crosses into the box, shoots from distance a lot, but can he be stopped? A bit like Martin Boyle. Occasionally a fullback can do it, but it's usually because he's having a bad day, and most of the time he's producing something for Kelly, so that's why I went for him.
You're saying a bit like Martin Boyle. I'm saying a little bit like Arjen Robben. So we've got different standards here. Dan Armstrong is one that I considered. Kyle Vassell, I really like, and he's taken the eye of a lot of opposition fans as well. Because I think without Vassell, you struggle. And it's obviously this isn't the best. This isn't the most important player. This is the best player discussion. So I think Dan Armstrong is safely a better player than Kyle Vassell, but Vassell makes you tick so much, and I really enjoy watching Vassell as well. Like, huge big unit of a guy with feet like velvet who can absolutely thump it into the back of the net. I love that. I went for David Watson because every time I've watched Kelly in the last 2 years, well, the last 18 months really, since Watson came in, he has stood out like a sore thumb. And considering his age, that is quite a feat. You know, Dan Armstrong, you know what you're getting with Dan Armstrong. You know you're getting cutting in from the right-hand side onto his left foot, trying to ping it in the top corner. You're getting great free kicks. You're getting good set-piece delivery. You're getting assists. You're getting goals. With David Watson, you're in real time seeing a guy develop into a top-class midfielder. I think that's really exciting. You can almost see the sort of the rough edges being smoothed off with every performance he puts in. He still gets daft bookings, but I love that. You know, he's full-hearted. He goes into every challenge thinking he can win it. And he can also play football. The way he transitions, the way he brings the ball through the midfield and finds Dan Armstrong on one side, or Marley Watkins, whoever it is so impressive. And so, as I say, it's exciting. Seeing a guy that young being that capable with his little stookie on his wrist and stuff like that. It's like, you know, he stands out on the park.
It's a wee homage to Armstrong, the pair of them. It's like
exactly,
the whole team will be doing it for, you know. But I think it's funny.
It.
You see that it's like sometimes it's like I've obviously got personal experience in my life now. It's being a dad sometimes when you're watching a young player come into the team, because I've got my wee girl, and you watch her and you're like, oh, you've learned this since the last time we walked along this road. You know, you forgot about that puddle when you stepped in it, and this time you haven't. Or, you know, it's like, and it's kind of the same with a footballer. It's like, all right, you've developed a lot as a player, and he's obviously working with a manager who will bring that out of you, and working with a good team of honest pros, but also like guys who will bring the character side out of him. Local boy, everything you want basically as a youth player for your team to come through. And the key is basically making sure we protect that and get the as sad as it is, get the maximum financial reward from that player is kind of what you're looking at now. And I
that's
think
not sad.
It's sad in the sense that it's sad in the sense that 40 years ago he probably plays his entire career at Kelly, and you know that maybe is better for us, but for him, I mean, I wouldn't say the sky's the limit. The lower end of the English Premier League is the limit, but you never know. But not straight away. But I think he'll get a good move, and hopefully if he goes in and he gets the right coaching, you never know, because as you say, you're seeing complete changes in the game, because he was basically a ball of energy when he came into the team, but the football wasn't there, and he's catching up, and the brain is definitely there. He's a smart player, and that's always really important, because you don't see a lot of young players coming into the team and immediately being able to kind of think through the midfield battle as well. So yeah, a very good choice, I think, as well. So that brings us to past the halfway mark, and that brings us on to, I think, the hardest one. You said about Rangers and Hibs and stuff being difficult. I found this close to impossible, and it's Livingston.
It's throwing darts at a board at this stage, and it's like that, you know, no disrespect to the Livingston fans watching, but you guys have fucking stank this season. You have stank the place out. You've been so bad. I mean, Christ, asked me a year ago, Shamal George should be in with a shout, but I don't think he's been very good this season. Christian Montano went through a purple patch. Jason Holt, we know he's capable. Sean Kelly scores penalties sometimes. You know, it's just Stephen Bradley. I don't mind Stephen Bradley. I think he's a decent attacking choice. For me, it's between Joel Nouble and Bruce Anderson, and I can't really pick one. I'm sorry, I'll go for Nouble because I do really enjoy the way that he plays. I think he is, put him in a better team, and he will be a really exciting player to watch. He's a guy that can just breeze past people, bring others into play, and get plenty of assists, maybe not many goals. He's not a huge goal scorer for who he is. But when Livy played at Tynecastle a few weeks ago, one of the worst performances I've seen at Tynecastle in years from a team. They looked like they were absolutely putting every sinew into getting a draw. That's how they played that game. And the two moments of excitement from a Livy point of view was Nouble picking it up, taking it on a Maisie, getting taken down and getting a couple of free kicks just inside the Hearts half. Hearts players getting booked. And that was really it. That's all they had to offer. So on the strength of that, and on the strength of we know what he's capable of and we know how good he can be, I'm going to go for Joel Nouble, but it is slim pickings.
I had the same experience when they came to Rugby Park, except that they didn't even remotely look as if they were close to even getting a draw. They were absolutely hopeless that day, and Nouble was amongst the worst in that respect. So I think on his form this season, I opted against him, but at the same time, on anyone's form, I don't think you could pick them. And I almost half thought, like, the guy who I don't even think is very good, but has been noticeable in his absence has been Iobelai, but I don't actually know how good he is. So I just went for Scott Pittman. Boring answer.
Yeah,
hung about for a long time.
He's a club legend.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player at this level, and you've seen that in plenty of times. But would he go in and actually definitely get a game at any other club in the Premiership at the moment? Maybe not, because it's sometimes you get these guys are kind of in with the bricks. We've all got them at our own clubs, really, to be honest, and a lot of what they bring is just the knowledge of the place and the knowledge of the club and like the knowledge of their teammates and all that. And then if you just dump them in a different team, it's like, oh, he's okay, but you probably wouldn't pick him. And so I've gone for Scott Pittman. It's just been hard for Livy this season because I really don't think anyone's played all that well. Because you looked at the defence and I was like, no, they're leaking goals all over the shop. You look up front, they're not scoring. Anderson and Kelly are two players that I quite like, but Stephen Kelly barely had a kick, and Anderson's not scoring goals the way he was. So what do you do? So yeah, pick the boring one. Pick the boring one and move on, and that's what we'll do. And we'll move on to another club where there's a bit of a similar problem, and that's Motherwell.
Yeah, I mean, Motherwell obviously started the season really well and have fallen off a cliff since. Obviously, great result at Parkhead notwithstanding. Mika Biereth, you just need to watch him for like 40 minutes and know that he is the best player at Motherwell. And what he's capable of doing is something that no other Motherwell player can do. He's physical, he's fast. He shows that he's got really good decision making when he gets into the box, especially. He knows how many touches to take and when to pass and when to shoot. And yeah, he's given some defences an absolutely torrid time this season, just not enough because he's had injury issues. And again, you wonder why guys like this, of this talent, are going to Motherwell and, aren't really, making waves at Arsenal. There's reasons why, there's consistency. And obviously that's the issue that you're maybe not going to get from Biereth all the time. But you look at what he is capable of doing and look at the points that Motherwell have picked up this season and how many you can attribute to Mika Biereth directly. Just the number of goals he's been involved in is remarkable. Again, there's players to like in that Motherwell team. You've got your old timers like Blair Spittle has been a good signing for Motherwell. You've got Brodie Spencer's been okay at left wing back, maybe not played or trusted often enough really by Kettlewell. And then I think the other outstanding one is Lennon Miller. Obviously he's out for the next few months, but he was superb coming in 16, 17 years old, and right from the League Cup group stage, you could tell that he had the ability to play at a man's level, and he's been brilliant. But in terms of the actual best player right now, I've gone for Biereth. Going by your nod, I think you might have gone for Lennon Miller.
I did think about him. I think if we'd seen more of him, I might have. And I had the same thought with Biereth in that we think he's good. He probably is good. The only time I've seen him in the flesh, he didn't have the best game, but Motherwell weren't really at the races against Kilmarnock. So I went again. I also was pretty sure you would pick him because I think if I was being honest with myself, I probably would pick him. And I thought, well, let's add a wee bit of contrast to the show. And I went for Blair Spittle because I think he's a player who I think has always been reasonably good at this level, but he's had a couple of relegations under his belt. I think a bit of time in the Championship. and you weren't sure when Motherwell signed him if it was really going to be a sensible one, but he's ultimately been pretty good for them, and I think as an attacking player, he's got a wee bit of everything. He's not like super creative, but he can create, and he's works really hard, but he's also like, he can beat a man, he can do a wee bit of everything. He's not brilliant at any of those individual things, but I thought I'll go for him on the basis that I think from this season as a whole, he's still been good, and he was one who was good last season as well when the going was good for many of them in the second half of last season. If Beereth has as good a remainder of the season as he's had this from the times he's played, then it'll probably be him. But by the end of the year, but I just went for a different player basically. And that brings us on to one of the ones that you said was more difficult, which is Rangers.
It's tough. It is tough. Like, again, like I'll rhyme off a bunch of players. Danilo looks like he could be an exceptional striker at this level. Huge chance he could end the season as the top scorer in Scotland. I think that's a real possibility. Just need to start getting him service and obviously get him playing more consistently. I think Abdallah Sima has been really good so far for Rangers this season. Probably him and Danilo have been probably the best of the new signings. Tavernier is always going to be James Tavernier. He just is James Tavernier. And I think that for me, it was between two, and I've just gone for the funnier option. I could have gone for Jack Butland, which is the correct answer, but I've gone for Todd Cantwell. I really like him. I think he's a little piece of shit. And I think he's going to fling himself to the ground at every opportunity. He's going to wind people up all the time. And that's going to take away from the talent that he has. And he's got a huge amount of talent. Like, in terms of getting himself into the box, the goals he can score, his range of passing, his dribbling ability going forward is absolutely, like, he plays like a winger going through the middle so often. The way that he can take it past and just drift past players. He's got a brilliant balance about him. He's got grace when he runs, which is, again, probably why he dived so fantastically against Aberdeen. It's because he's got this flamboyance about him that he takes onto TikTok and annoys your dad about and all that kind of stuff. But Jack Butland is a correct answer, but I couldn't answer anything other than Todd Cantwell for this question. And I think it's really interesting right now because Philippe Clement kind of has the same issue as Nick Montgomery has with Ellie Yuan, is that where do you fit him into the team where you're going to get the best out of him in the system that you want to play? And I think he's yet to work that out. And again, if you're Philippe Clement, that's a great issue to have. How do I fit this incredibly talented footballer into my team, or how do I change him slightly to make him a better player in this system? And I think, you just need to look at Rangers fans' reactions when Cantwell isn't playing to tell you how highly they think of him as well. He is a superb talent, a guy that a few years ago as a late teen, early 20s was scoring in the English Premier League for Norwich, was being touted with big moves, likes of Arsenal were interested. It's not a guy that has just appeared out of nowhere. I think a lot of people knew who he was beforehand, but he's a guy that every time he's playing, I'm interested in what he's doing. And I think that's enough to say, like, right, you've got a talent in your squad. How do you round it off? But for the sake that it's going to annoy people because they don't like him because he's got daft blonde hair, a little blue bow tie in his head, and he dives about a bit, I think that takes away from his ability. I think he's a cracking player.
We're going to turn this into a clickbait thing. Make sure we get a graphic tweeted out so people can abuse us online for our choices. I think
this is 100% the one that Fowler's going to clip out and put online. Like, you don't doubt it.
He's a very much an off-the-cuff player, and I think he's got that ability to really change games. He's also got the ability to absolutely stink out the joint, which is actually quite an interesting thing. Like that Aberdeen game on Sunday was hopeless. There was a game against Celtic where I thought he was absolutely diabolical, but there have also been games where he's turned up and he's won the game for Rangers. I went for the one you said was the sensible answer, Butland.
It's not sensible, it's correct. It's the right answer.
I wasn't sure when they signed him, not on the basis that I don't think he's a good goalkeeper. He's been in England squads and played at a high level for a long time, but he hadn't really played much football in the kind of year or two before he signed for, was he at Man United at some point? He was at like all sorts of clubs where he was just essentially just squad fodder, ticking a box for homegrown and all the rest of it. So to come to Rangers, where there is a lot of pressure on a goalkeeper, it's a very specialised role to be the Rangers goalkeeper, I think. You go and play some games in Europe where you're expected to like save a bombardment of shots, and then you've got many domestic games where you're a basic spectator and your job is to start an occasional attack but also be concentrated in case there's a counter-attack. So it's quite an odd job, but he has adapted to it really well. We had a really good game against Aberdeen. I think there's a couple of chances where Aberdeen could have been out of sight, not out of sight, but more than one goal ahead, had he not popped up with big saves. And he has, I think I saw some Rangers Twitter account suggesting, have they finally found a replacement for Alan McGregor? And I think they probably have, except that he's not a prick.
Well, we don't know that for sure yet.
Don't.
Give him more time. Give him more time. You never know.
Right, so we are down to the last three. Another one that I found a wee bit tricky. Funny, the ones we find tricky are the teams who are doing badly. Who would have guessed? It's Ross County.
Yeah, just on the basis that I'd quite like Hearts to sign him, and Hearts were close to signing him, I'm going to go for Jan Danda. He is for me, probably the most creative player in the bottom six.
Yeah.
Like his range of passing, his ability to play it across the deck, but also those big rangy cross-field bad boys that he's fond of, from free kicks, from corner kicks. And again, it's like I'm talking about players who can sort of move it effectively through the midfield. Like when he's got the ball at his feet, he drifts, he can go past the man and he can find the easy pass, or he can go past the man and then go past another and create things and make things happen for Ross County. I think it's obviously, he took a bit of time to bed in. He wasn't starting games initially under Malky Mackay, and then all of a sudden he did, and folk were like, why on earth was this guy not starting to begin with? And I think that when you've got, the likes of one and done strikers like Jordan White and Eamon Brophy, you need someone who's going to feed them, because they won't necessarily feed themselves. Simon Murray, again, maybe stands out a wee bit from that, because he's someone who will try and, he's a touch and shoot rather than just, I'm going to shoot type of striker. So, there's a slight difference there with Murray, but Jan Danda just makes all the guys in front of him better, I think. And you look at the assists he's got for Jordan White, because he knows that there's a great big tall guy in the middle, so aim for tall, and that's what he does really well. He can stick it on the sixpence and then, back of the net, and that's what gets Ross County vital points, really vital points. I'm sure you can track a lot of what they've done, in the past 2 seasons, because they've been struggling. You can track a lot of that back to Jan Danda. So that's who I've gone for. Not a huge amount to go for, I don't think, at Ross County.
He's the one I picked as well, and I think it's everything you said, but also set pieces as well. He's strong with those, and also he's crossing from open play, which is what you kind of alluded to with White, but he can do it from pretty much anywhere on the park. He's one of these guys, and it's quite a rare talent to be able to. I mean, anyone can lump a ball into the box from deep, like that's fine. Lots of players can do that, but to deliver good balls from deep, there's not a lot of players in the league that can do it. Tavernier can do it. Borna Barisic can do it. Alistair Johnston's kind of getting there a bit with it, but Max Johnston was very good at it for Motherwell, but it's not that common, and that's mainly fullback, so it's quite strange that obviously a wide player who spends most of their game usually higher up the park, but he has a real knack of, even from kind of almost quarterback type positions, being able to deliver really high quality into the box, and I really like him, and as I say, I think he will probably thrive a bit more under Adams, because I think Adams has a bit more room for, not mavericks, but like players who are a bit less rigid, I think.
It's a bit more room for creativity.
Yeah.
I think that Malky played a rigid, way of playing football, which is fine if it works, but it didn't work and he got sacked, and that's very funny.
Yeah, that's why he had attacking players. It's not like he didn't put attacking players in the team, but they were still asked to be quite one-dimensional almost in their play. So yeah, I think that was good. That was a good agreement here. I think we might agree on this club as well, which is St Johnstone. I don't know if we're fully in the 3-2-1 category here, but we're probably close, like we did with Shankland. But
are you going for the goalkeeper?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Dimitar Mitov, great signing, and I think the improvement since McLean left the club, the game that Alec Cleland took, and then obviously Craig Levein and Andy Kirk ever since, you could argue there's a few that have improved so much that you could say, like, all right, okay, well, Ryan McGowan is St Johnstone's best player. Robinson at left wing back is St Johnstone's best player. Dan Phillips, Matt Smith. Like, you could say a few of these guys, but over the course of the season, Dimitar Mitov has not let his quality and not let his performance levels drop at all. He's just a really good goalkeeper, good young goalkeeper as well, and something that, for all St Johnstone have done wrong in the past couple of years, basically since they won that double, they've done a lot wrong. Dimitar Mitov is something they've got incredibly correct, and for me, one of the best goalkeepers in the Premiership, top 3.
Yeah, and there's good there's actually quite a lot of good goalkeepers. I think there's 3 on this list that for me anyway that we've talked about already. And yeah, I agree. And also got the advantage of kind of rustling up the English lower league fans, because I think there was a lot of Cambridge fans saying, "Oh, why is he, why is he gone up there, a step down and all that?" And then he gets called up for Bulgaria, and you're like, well, I don't think he would be getting called up for Bulgaria at Cambridge. So there's an aspect to that, and I think he's one that one of two things happens: either he kind of declines a wee bit, and then he's just at St Johnstone for a while, and you're like, oh yeah, he's a good goalkeeper, like kind of Thomas Cherney with Hamilton, where you're like, oh, this guy's really good, and then he's just fine. He's still a good Hamilton goalkeeper, but not above that. Or he does well for the rest of the season and probably ends up at another Scottish club, or even on the bench for one of the big 2 in Scotland, because there's always a path to that, as like the likes of Benjamin Siegrist and Lucas Zaluska have found out in recent years, and probably others that I've forgotten.
Scott Bain,
yes, indeed. They did have a brief laughable spell as both Celtic and Scotland #1, which lasted a matter of about 2 months. And how have we managed to mention him twice in this podcast at 2 independent occasions? But yeah, McLaughlin's another example of that, right? In that it's probably not done his international prospects any good. He could probably have been looking at another major tournament, but for that. But it's definitely done his bank balance good, and his work-life balance must be. I mean, it's very much heavily in the life category, isn't it? When you're John McLaughlin.
John McLaughlin is life.
Yes,
what we're saying. Yes,
and that brings us on with no link at all to our final club, which is the buddies of Paisley St Mirren Football Club. Again, one that I think there's a few options, because they're for the opposite reason, they're having a good season. So, and a good spell indeed, like probably a good 2.5 years, to be honest, for St Mirren, and culminated with the top 6 finish last year. They are obviously flying at the moment. We'll see how that continues, because it's always tricky to sustain. But who did you eventually kind of land your roulette wheel on?
I think there's just a few options, isn't there? It is a right good side that probably is going to get ripped to shreds, unfortunately, come the end of the season, given contract situations and just having saleable assets. I think it was tough for me, because I wanted to go for Mark O'Hara, but I kind of assumed that you would, so I haven't. And I've gone for Ryan Strain instead. Keanu Bacchus gets the honorary mention. Ryan Strain's phenomenal, I think, as a right wing back, as a right back. He's got absolutely everything you could possibly want. He scores great goals. He's really strong defensively. He whips in a mean ball, and he absolutely thumps into challenges. I really like Ryan Strain, and I really want Hearts to sign him, because we need a right back.
Well, you've got the guy who currently starts ahead of him at international level. So,
well, actually, it was Ryan Strain's teammate Scott Tanzer has put Atkinson out for God knows how long, probably until the new year, by body slamming him into the turf at Paisley. So yeah, Ryan Strain is now, I think, the starting right back for Australia. But honestly, I think rightly so as well. I think he's got more to his game than Atkinson. And I like Atkinson. He's improved massively under Naismith. But Ryan Strain, I just, again, like, have a huge appreciation for right backs like that. Guys who work hard but have got a little bit of showiness about them. They've got a little bit of fanciness. They've got a swagger. Probably one of the positions in the pitch that you should have the least amount of swagger. He manages to have it. And he's been so important to St Mirren, in terms of, again, we're talking set pieces, but goals as well. And his weird sort of like partnership relationship with his sort of opposite side wing back in Scott Tanzer as well. It's 2 guys that find each other quite often in the box, and I really like that aspect of their play. So that's why I've gone for Ryan Strain. I think that Mark O'Hara, again, similar to Butland, is maybe the correct answer, the expected answer, but I really like Strain, and I wanted to talk about him.
I went for Strain as well. I think O'Hara's like one of these players. Obviously, as a good player, I saw that firsthand. I think he was a very promising youngster. It was the right decision for all parties when he left Kelly, because I think his career was stagnating a wee bit there, and it obviously worked out really nicely for him. But he is a very much an example to me of a penalty influence player, that just because he scores a lot of penalties, people think he's better than he is. Not that he's not very good, because he is, but it's like, if he hadn't scored like 8 penalties or whatever it was last season, would people have gone, oh, Mark O'Hara's having a fantastic season? I'm not sure they would. They probably should have done. Whereas I think Strain is consistent. Everything you said about him again, like he's an all-round fullback. He can do everything that you want. It's defensively, it's attacking. He can come in. He can come in field. He can go wide. He can shoot. He can tackle. Anything you ask him to do, he'll do. I mean, the same is true of O'Hara, absolutely. But I think Strain's the sexier answer. He's like new to Scottish football still relatively, and may still be in Scottish football in a wee while, but also might be gone in January. But I think one of those guys who you weren't sure about when he came in, and he's kind of, from the moment you saw him play the first time, you're like, this guy is a really good player. So I went for Strain on that basis, and I think he will go down for St Mirren as being like a key part in one of their very good teams. So you have a lot of these guys when you're a smaller club where they might not be at your club for very long, but they leave very long memories, and I think that's always nice as well.
Definitely.
So I think that kind of brings us to the end of all 12 clubs. I think it does. It definitely does. There were 12 clubs. We have discussed 12 clubs, so undoubtedly it brings us to the end. And so thank you to all the listeners for listening to this. Please get in touch. We really want to see our inboxes filled with just names of players for the next week or so. So please do that. It's really exciting content when that happens, and we will, as we promised at the start, be going over to Patreon, where we'll be kind of more briefly in a tongue-in-cheek, a light-hearted way, saying who we think are the worst kind of regulars for each Scottish Premiership club. So if you're on the Patreon, get over there and listen to that. If you're not, again, £2 a month for that tier. There's a £5 a month tier, which gets you even more content than you can shake a stick at if you have a shaking stick available to you, and we'll do that. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for joining me, Rob.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. Enjoyed that.
And thanks, and this weekend, make sure you enjoy your football with the maximum respect available.